Okay, next up we have Pat Sauer with the Iowa Stormwater Education Partnership to talk about unified sizing criteria. Pat is the Executive Director of ISWEP and a soil scientist by trade. Oversees the ISWEP education program to create resources to use in Iowa MS4 and some non-MS4 cities in Iowa. She organizes and conducts ISWEP's training and certification programs throughout the entire state, and much like Erin is our resident stream nerd, she self-classifies as a stormwater, soil, and erosion control nerd, if I can say that. So welcome, Pat. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ben. Morning, everyone. So I thought I had a half hour for this presentation, and last night I rechecked, and it's like, you have 15 minutes. I'm like, oh my God, I've got all these slides I've got to cut out, and they're really good slides. But anyway, so I'm going to do this really quickly, and I probably have to talk a little fast because they're just some really cool slides, but I won't talk too fast. So, okay, so in all of this, in looking at our urban areas, we're looking at the amount of impervious surfaces and what it was before, what we're looking at now, and there are certain areas of this state where there's phenomenal growth that is occurring with the addition of impervious surfaces. And just to think about, I saw this paradigm in Europe. We've got some of these areas where we have huge parking lots, like at Walmart, the shopping malls or whatever, and those parking lots are probably only filled before Christmas, before the holiday season. Otherwise, the majority of that impervious surface is just sitting there collecting rain off, and we're getting it to the stream as fast as we can. But thinking about, how can we do this a little differently? Maybe we use the impervious surface closer to the mall or the shopping portion of the building, and maybe we look at some other alternatives in the areas that are not parked on as often. Okay, conventional stormwater management. Typically, the model is, or was, to collect, convey, and get it to the stream as efficiently and quickly as we possibly can. Most practices they're located at the most downstream point of the entire site, so we're looking at end-of-pipe control. We're looking at trying to maintain the peak runoff rates at pre-development levels for design storm events, and therefore when a pond is constructed, the peak flow will not be fully controlled for these storm events. And let me just back up. I grew up in Milwaukee, and this is what I saw as a kid growing up on a lot of streams, and I didn't quite understand it. I'm like, I don't get why these are concrete lined. And so, but you can see what's happening over time. So these are probably 50 years old. Look what's happening over time. There's some prairie vegetation that's creeping in and saying, hey, I'm staking my ground again. And however, Milwaukee is in the process of converting some of these to a natural channel again. So when we're looking at low impact design and green infrastructure, what we're trying to do there is mimic historic hydrology, which was, in the state of Iowa, for the most part, prairie vegetation, right? And so we're also trying to look at managing all rainfall events. So this will take, Erin touched on it, a distributed approach. So you're looking at, you can think watershed basis. You're distributing the BMPs throughout the site. Try and capture as much as you can on the site before it runs off the site, is what we're trying to do. And designating areas. If we have areas that have high infiltration rates, let's protect them, or let's put rain gardens there. Or if we have woodlands, prairie restorations, let's keep those healthy so they capture and infiltrate rainfall. And so we're also looking at managing for water quality, but we're also looking at controlling runoff volume and peak runoff in the design. For engineers, we're trying to preserve the hydrologic regime of pre-development condition. So what does that mean? When looking at curve numbers, there are communities that have set that as meadow in good condition rather than agriculture, row crops. And so, I always notice my typos when I'm giving my presentation, not when I'm reviewing them. And then here's this word, hydrologically functional landscapes. The bottom line is trying to soak up more water, having less runoff. And then of course, the additional benefits, and there have been studies that have been conducted, the green infrastructure actually in communities there's usually a connection to trails and streams, so there's an aesthetic beauty associated with them, and then habitat, as well as there will be a talk at the Iowa Water Conference in March about the mental health benefits as well. Okay, so, apologize about the blue. It looks really great, the light blue on my screen. You never quite know until you project it on a large screen. But This is a hydrograph. So this is what engineers, for those of you that are not engineers, but this is what engineers look at when they're designing things. So we're looking at discharge on the left, y-axis. Are we seeing? Okay, y-axis, and time here on the x-axis. So number one is, this is the existing pre-developed, and this would be ag cropland. So it starts raining out, you get a peak, it decreases over time. So that's number one. Two is, when we start development, we adding impervious surfaces, rooftops, roadways, streets, and this is without any controls. Look at what happens. You get this dramatic peak, and then you get this decline over time. And so number three is looking at using conventional practices. This is what detention and retention does. And sorry that I'm getting a little too close here to the mic. And what detention and retention does is it's trying to shave off this peak, because we know what happens when we have that peak. You've experienced that firsthand in your communities. We're trying to shave off that peak and discharge over a longer duration. But what we're finding, and Aaron has shown some of you this, is as a result of that, yes, we're shaving off the peak, but we are discharging at rates that are so high that it is eroding out stream banks and causing unraveling streams is what's happening. So when you look at low impact development in this distributed approach, what we're trying to do there is mimic the historic hydrology. So yes, you're still going to get a peak, but you're trying to decrease this extended duration that is occurring. Okay, so there are different ways I'm going to look at this. One is, let's look at rainfall trends before I get at the unified sizing criteria. So you understand what the unified sizing criteria is doing. And I realize now, Wayne Peterson put these together in 2004. We need an update, and I need someone to update these for me so we can include these in presentations throughout the state. But let's look at this. The current focus in most communities is flood control, detention and retention, or wet and dry ponds. And so what we're looking at is we're managing. So this is precipitation in inches, and this is percent. And what we're looking at is we're managing, in many communities, the less frequent significant rainfall events. Look at this is 0.3%, generating 3+ inches of rainfall. But that is managing for flood control. We're not really doing anything. Most of these basins are not designed for water quality management. And so what we're ignoring is the water quality aspect of this. So look at the rainfall trends. So if you look at the more frequent rainfall events, 90% of our rainfall events are generating 1.25 inches of rainfall or less. 90% of our rainfall events generate 1.25 inches or less, okay? So if we focus our attention on managing water quality, we're going to capture and remove a lot of pollutants from the system. But hang on, how about if we think about channel protection too, so we're not discharging at rates that are going to erode and blow out our streams, so we don't have to spend a lot of money trying to fix our streams. So the channel protection volume, actually, if you put all this together, you're looking at 94% if you're managing all of that. So what this unified sizing criteria is, it's a unified approach to managing stormwater. You're managing for flood control, but you're also managing for water quality, and you're managing for channel protection. And for most of you, it's the water quality volume and channel protection that would be new to you. So here's the unified stormwater sizing criteria that's actually coming from the coasts. This started probably 25 years now on the East Coast, using this unified approach to stormwater management. This is second nature to them. This is just what they do. And states, it's starting to move into the central part of the Midwest, central part of the United States. So water quality volume, 1.25 inches in 24 hours. That channel protection volume is 2.38 inches. Overbank flood protection, 4 inches, and extreme flood protection greater than 6 to 7 inches. What's amazing is we're still getting, we're getting these significant events. It's pretty amazing. So how are we going to mimic this historic hydrology? We're going to try and, these words, infiltrate, percolate, slow the flows, decrease peak discharges. So this is a relatively new diagram showing the perspective on these different rainfall events. So managing your water quality volume, channel protection, and how all of this fits in together. And this is sort of the way I thought it could be represented as well. Water quality volume, you're trying to capture and remove a lot of the pollutants. A lot of goals are TSS removal, 80% TSS, total suspended solids. Suspended solids, these are the solids that are remain in suspension in water. And capturing other pollutants as well. So think about that. But we're also doing volume reduction in that practice as well. Channel protection, we're trying to throttle things down so we're not eroding out our streams. And then I think you all are familiar with overbank and then extreme flood protection methods as well. So we want to look at this comprehensive approach that manages both water quality and quantity. And essentially, the approach is going to be trying to minimize the impacts on a development. And taking a look at impervious surfaces and thinking about how can we look at our landscapes more to capture, infiltrate more stormwater, treat it, or even reuse it as well. So these are the tools in your toolbox on the water quality side of it, in managing pollutants and volume reduction, infiltration, best bioretention practices, looking at landscaping with natives, hardscapes, your permeable pavement systems. But we still have to address flood control through detention and retention. And actually you can design retention ponds to manage the unified sizing criteria as well as wetlands. And putting this all together, we're looking at a system called and Applied Ecological Services. Actually, they're here not to call out one specific vendor, but this stormwater treatment train. So looking at putting all these practices together. But what are two of the easiest best management practices that you could start off with? Anyone? $500. Easiest. Easy peasy. Oh, it's the morning. I can't extract information. They're like, don't look at me, don't look at me. Okay, I'll tell you. One of the easiest things is redirecting downspouts. Don't have the downspouts go down your driveways and sidewalks. Direct it to a healthy lawn area. So I found that last night, that photo. The other thing is soils. Taking when we disturb the soils and do development, we end up with compacted soils, usually low in organic matter. If we can improve the soils through soil quality restoration and manage that raindrop where it's falling, that's pretty easy peasy. So, okay, I don't know how much more time I have left. How much more time do I have left, Ben? I'm going to kind of fly. Oh, cool. All right, I am talking fast. So soil quality restoration, in the Iowa Stormwater Management Manual, there are 8 methods for that. And one of the easiest methods is to not disturb the soil and designate and protect those soil areas. And you can do this through a soil management plan, which I think every SWIP should include a soil management plan, protecting the soils that you can. Okay, the soils, where are you stripping and stockpiling? And when you're returning the soil, how are you going to remediate? Deep tillage, and then incorporating high quality topsoil and or compost. And these methods actually can manage the soil, the water quality volume. But starting with what is a healthy soil, we're trying to get 8 inches of a healthy soil profile, dark in color, low clay content, high organic matter, loosely packed, and not regularly saturated. We're not looking at wetland soils. So, I don't have time to go through all the methods, but here's the number 1 method, preserve existing soils. Typically, the snow fence does a fairly good job of delineating those. When it comes to soil quality restoration, actually found out about some new tools that we have. We did a demonstration in Dubuque associated with the International Erosion Control Association meeting, used a subsoiler, and this was pretty crappy urban soil. And so they brought in a spader, and they told me we can get down to 14 inches if we try. And so they went through, and there were bricks and chunks and whatever, and they were able I took my penetrometer, were able to get down 10 to 12 inches to loosen that soil. And then they went over it with a fine grader. So there's technology that's out there. And this equipment comes in various sizes, large sizes, small lot sizes as well. So one method that most of you are probably familiar with is if you have an existing lawn, to aerate and top dress with compost. So you're trying to deal with the compaction side of it as well as increasing the soil organic matter. So I'll kind of go through that relatively quickly. Rain gardens, distributing these throughout the landscape. So depression, you're trying to utilize an intact soil profile that will infiltrate and percolate the rainwater. So those are taking off in Iowa. Bioretention cells, so Aaron talked about pre-treatment. I've done maintenance. I like to do things, if I'm going to talk about something, I like to do the walk too. And so I have maintained rain gardens. I have maintained bioretention cells in native landscape areas. It is a pain in the butt if there is rock used for pre-treatment and trying to clean the sediment out. I have not figured out a good way of doing that. I really do like these practices, which is like a sump feature. It's a rain guardian. Public Works loves it too. Pop the grate out, vac it out, and clean it out. Sometimes there is some sediment that does move and migrate into the aggregate that you see here. But thinking about all these green infrastructure practices, you have to think about there's the warm and fuzzy, the habitat looks great or whatever. Who's going to inspect? Who is going to be maintaining them? How are you going to train them as well? This is the profile of a bioretention cell, and these are really taking off across the United States. Bioswales design. The subgrade is similar to a bioretention cell, but they also convey larger storm events as well. Seattle, that's probably the most photographed swale system. This is in the Great Lakes area. Davenport area, swale system, incorporating native landscaping. I think you all are familiar with the rooting systems, the benefits of the native plants. And I think we should look at, in the ag world, they talk about prairie filter strips. I think we should be looking at prairie filter strips on lawns, on the downslope side of lawns for nutrient removal. So somebody, University of Iowa, it'd be nice if you could do some research on that. So, anyway, even using native turf, again, trying to manage that water drop where it's falling. Permeable pavement systems are really taking off in the state. The pavers system seem to be the focus in a lot of areas these days. So you have these subsurface aggregate layers that clean the water before it's discharged to the subsurface storm sewer system. And Charles City set an example, 25 blocks of permeable pavers. West Union, 16 blocks. They also have permeable paver sidewalks. We were in Cedar Rapids yesterday for the tour. This is actually on top, the rainwater harvesting system that they use to irrigate the vegetation on top of the building, the green roof. Tree filter boxes as well. These practices do require the forebay and pre-treatment. I saw this Silva cell system, and I think there's someone from Clinton here saying I saw you somewhere. They have a Silva cell system. I saw one of these installed up in St. Paul, subsurface system, where you give me the tree roots an area. Instead of having this confined area, you give them subsurface area that they can extend their roots. Infiltration basins and trenches, green roofs, living walls. I have not seen living walls in Iowa yet. That's not to say there aren't any, but they're really taking off in Seattle area and as well as...
Hey, can I make a comment?
Yes.
There's a really nice one downtown Marshalltown.
Oh, great. Thanks. I always like to find out about that. So.
2 buildings over more than land, I took it out, but it lives.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you. Great. And then our woodlands and prairie restoration and reconstruction, looking at opportunities in your park areas or wherever. Where can we improve that habitat so we're trying to absorb more water? Okay, flood control practices. So this actually is a detention basin that has, I know that the trees actually have been removed since I took this picture, but they planted it to natives. Retention basins, I think we all know how these systems work. And some of the issues that some of the cities face with some of the wet ponds especially is people think they live on waterfront property. They also complain about the algae and don't understand that they're actually part of the issue by heavily fertilizing their lawns. Constructed wetlands, there's a new design guideline in the Iowa Stormwater Management Manual. Nice practice. Actually, Bill Hunt has done a lot of research on these. You're providing for flood control, but you get really good water quality benefits treatment as well. There will be training on this. I know Paul Miller is here from IDALS. We will have training on this the early part of next year. And there are actually some communities. This is Elgin, Illinois. We actually had them come and speak probably about 4 or 5 years ago. It's a community that is looking at converting some of their dry detention. And here, the focus on this design is let's collect, convey, not even managing the water quality volume. And so they're retrofitting a lot of their dry basins to incorporate features that will manage water quality as well. This is the new wetland design guideline in the Iowa Stormwater Management Manual. Then we're looking at putting it all together in a stormwater treatment train. in many different scenarios. This could be in an ultra-urban area in downtown Cedar Rapids. You might have green roofs, you might have planter boxes or tree filter boxes, or in a residential area, you might have rain gardens, your downspouts are connected to that, or these prairie filter strips in the yards. You might have swale systems as well. So this I borrowed from AE, Applied Ecological Services. They actually developed the term stormwater treatment train. So you're looking at where the raindrop is falling. I would include soil quality restoration in here as well, rain gardens, and then maybe in a subdivision area, you might have swales conveying water to a stormwater feature, flood management feature, a wet basin, or a constructed wetland. You might have buffers that you're using along streams. So a lot of different practices that are available. And with that, I will stop. This is my next presentation, which you'll hear a little bit later on. So that is the unified sizing criteria in a nutshell.